billionaires hide their money in offshore accounts in other islands and countries. How ethical and legal is that? What's the pain purpose of this process? Is it to avoid taxes only? Yes, it's absolutely to avoid taxes. I don't think it's unethical to, move your money around the world in different countries if you can get better investment opportunities in different countries. And so when it comes to taxes, taxes are pretty high where I live right now. I mean, California, the state of California is like the seventh biggest economy in the world. And the state's almost bankrupt and taxes are ridiculously high. And so what a lot of people do in the state of California is they move to the neighboring state called Nevada, and they live there for just over 6 months of the year so they can pay much, much lower taxes. And there's nothing unethical about that. And so I'll give you an example of how offshore banking works, or offshore taxes, I should say. There's a lot of tax havens all over the world. If you're in the United Kingdom, it's SARC. And if you're in North America, a lot of people like to use the Cayman Islands. What I've used a lot actually, and I've set up a company offshore, is instead of using the Cayman Islands, I used BVI, which is the British Virgin Islands. And when I ran my hedge fund, I had what's called a master feeder structure, meaning an onshore for U.S. residents, a vehicle to invest in, and an offshore in the British Virgin Islands. And the reason I had the offshore vehicle, and the reason a lot of investment firms do, is because it's not fair for somebody in Europe or some other country, to put their money in a U.S. investment and pay U.S. taxes. It's more fair for them to pay taxes elsewhere. And whenever you run an investment firm, which I've done a couple times before, you're never supposed to provide any advice on exactly how your clients should do taxes, but you want to provide them a menu of options. They can invest in the U.S. entity, for example, or the British Virgin Islands, which has very, very low taxes. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, when I worked at Accenture years ago, I'm dating myself, but back in 1996 and 1997, I was part of a team that set up an offshore bank for CIBC COBSCO. COBSCO stands for CIBC Offshore Banking Services Corporation. And what happened was, at that time, I'm not sure if the tax rules are still in play right now, but if you were a Commonwealth country, meaning Australia, Canada, etc., if you were a Commonwealth country and you traded financial instruments, especially big U.S. bonds and other global bonds, if you traded them in Barbados, then when you brought the profit back home, you'd only pay a 1% withholding tax. There's nothing wrong with finding tax loopholes. Cheating on your taxes is a serious crime and you can go to jail for that, yes. But there's nothing wrong with trying to shop around to find better prices on any products you might buy, or to find better tax havens for your money. And so if you have additional questions on offshore banks and how to lower your taxes in general by investing offshore, let me know. Please keep in mind, I'm not a tax accountant. I'm not a tax attorney either. And for those of you that want to speak with a tax attorney, what you can do, and I don't get comped by any company whenever I mention products, but what you can do is for $15, you can set up a half-hour call with a lawyer by going to LegalZoom.com, any type of lawyer you want. And I used LegalZoom in the past for setting up my offshore my copyrights overseas and trademarks overseas using what's called the Madrid Protocol. And sorry, going off track here, but it's interesting. But in 1989, about 100 countries got together in Madrid, and they all said, I will honor your copyrights and trademarks if you honor mine. That's what the Madrid Protocol is. Again, speak with a real tax attorney or real intellectual property attorney, and you can go to LegalZoom.com and pay just $15 for a half-hour call, which is a pretty darn good deal for legal services. They speak really slowly, though. No? Sorry. No more dad humor.